A Zionist group with close ties to the Israeli government called the Jewish National Fund is using American anti-terrorism laws to go after people they don't like, specifically groups protesting Israel's inhumane treatment of Palestinians. From The Guardian, the JNF and a group of American Israelis are seeking damages from the US Campaign for Palestinian Rights over its support for the Boycott, Divest and Sanctions, otherwise known as BDS, movement led by Palestinians to mobilize nonviolent international pressure on Israel. The JNF claims that the BDS movement is a front for terrorist groups. The lawsuit claims that the BDS movement is in large part controlled by Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and other groups banned in the US and Israel as terrorist organizations. The legal action argues that by raising money for BDS and backing the boycott movement, the US Campaign for Palestinian Rights is materially supporting terrorism, which is of course an absurd claim. But the suit was brought under the Anti-Terrorism Act, which allows victims of attacks by groups the United States government designates as a foreign terrorist organization to sue for damages in United States courts. The US Campaign for Palestinian Rights is a coalition of groups which seeks to end the decades-long occupation of East Jerusalem and the West Bank. And they argue that the lawsuit is part of a broader strategy to harass organizations that criticize Israel's oppression of the Palestinian people. And so far, thankfully, American courts have agreed that the lawsuit is baseless. Again, from The Guardian, a federal court in Washington, D.C. dismissed the lawsuit in 2021. Saying that the JNF and other plaintiffs had made threadbare assertions of financial support for terrorism. The JNF appealed and told a court hearing last week that the decision to dismiss had been wrong in the face of very gross violations of the anti-terrorism statute. And I'll say that that language from the lower court is making me cautiously optimistic that the repeal will be rejected, but we'll just have to see. Cenk, what are your thoughts on this?
Okay, so this is a right-wing organization, not an American right-wing one, but an Israeli right-wing one. And what do they hate? Free speech. So they're like, oh, you're saying that people should boycott Israel. Shut up. We're gonna sue you for a lot of money. We're gonna try to destroy you if you ever say things like that again. Well, we're supposed to live in a free country, but hey, does that affect anything here? If they lose the case, well, that'd be great news, and maybe they just misunderstood the country. Well, the problem is 30 different states have passed laws saying you're not allowed to participate in the boycott movement of Israel. If you do, you'll lose government contracts, maybe your livelihood. So they're gonna punish you for speech. And who's pushing that movement? The right wing here in America. You better not speak out against Israel. If you do, we'll ruin your life. That's who the right wing is. They don't like freedom of speech, they hate freedom of speech. So now in this, now we go back to Israel. So no matter what the Palestinians do, right-wing Israeli groups call them terrorists. So in the beginning, obviously there's war, there's an endless series of wars. In 1948, lots of Palestinians leave their homes as they're being attacked. Then they attack back, and then you'll get into an Israeli perspective, Palestinian perspective. They'll tell you the other side started it. I don't want to get into that whole long spiel, but at some point the Palestinians try to take it back by force. And people say, oh, when Israel took it by force, or when America takes things by force, or when the European countries take things by force, that's wonderful. They're wonderful, great, strong conquerors, and in America it's manifest destiny, right? If the Palestinians try force, terrorists, okay? But hey, listen, they're using force and violence, and I hate that. Okay, so you call them terrorists. I can live with it as long as we've got a good, even-handed approach to who we call terrorists. Israel has a 100-to-1 kill ratio oftentimes in the conflicts that they have in the Gaza Strip now, where they kill 100 times the civilians that the Palestinians do. They go, no, we are not terrorists, even though we killed all those civilians. If a Palestinian does it, well, they are terrorists by definition. If Israel kills 100 times the civilians, not terrorists by definition. And now, okay, the Palestinians are saying, okay, look, it's a very tiny group of people that are going the violence route now. The great majority of Palestinians are saying, let's do this peacefully. Let's go to the UN and ask to become a state. Terrorists. What do you mean? That's exactly what Israel did. I don't care. By definition, we hate Muslims, we hate Palestinians, we're deeply racist against them, and we want to dehumanize them, we want to deny them a state, we want to deny them their freedom, we want to keep them in an open air prison for the rest of their lives. So anything a Palestinian does, we're just going to call it terrorism. Now in this case, they go, well, let's do the boycott movement, just like just like black folks did in South Africa against apartheid. It worked. And that's exactly what they're afraid of. This could work. So they go, oh, I got a great idea. Let's just call them terrorists. And let's try to bankrupt them. And maybe we can get right-wingers in America who also hate freedom of speech, who also devalue Muslims, Palestinians, etc., and are also racist against them. And they'll help us destroy them and crush them. Well, by the way, if you actually hate terrorism, if you take away every other option, what do you think they're going to do? But it's not about terrorism. It's about oppressing Palestinians forever and ever and ever and controlling their land. It's disgusting. Go ahead, sue me over it, bitches, you monsters, imprisoning those people for all those years and pretending you're the victim. It's disgusting. And you know what? I live in America. You want to try to take away my freedom of speech? Go for it. Let's see how it turns out for you. You're sick. All right, that's my opinion. Lance.
Well, I mean, at the risk of Jeremy Corbyn myself here, yeah, no, I think you're entirely correct on all of that. I think the language that is being used to describe this kind of stuff, we need to really start reinforcing the idea that there's a difference between criticizing Israel and criticizing the Israeli people and criticizing governments of other countries. It's perfectly normal to describe the current Israeli government as being a far-right government, because that's what it is, not only in my words, but by their own definition. I think the finance minister recently said that he's a self-described fascist homophobe. Like, that's what he said out loud, not like we're gonna read into the words that he's thinking. This is what he says out loud, and this is the way he thinks. And he says, I may be a fascist homophobe, but I'm not going to stone the gays. This is pretty extreme rhetoric being used again by a far-right government. And so it's not in any way anti-Semitic to call that out. In fact, I think it's anti-Semitic to treat all Jewish people like monoliths, where you're unable to criticize a government for their actions just because you're worried about being, I don't know, Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah, I want to say something super important about that. Look, you go and watch our videos on Kanye, Trump, whoever it might be. No one fights against anti-Semitism harder than we do. But these idiot right-wingers, this particular group that's coming out of Israel, they're actually helping the cause of anti-Semitism. Because they're saying, hey, you know what? It's just a boy who cried wolf. It doesn't matter. It's a political trick. Whether they're actually anti-Semitic like Kanye West, Trump, and the others, or they're not anti-Semitic, who cares? Let's just call them anti-Semitic for political reasons. But when the actual anti-Semitic monsters rise up like Kanye and encourage everyone to be anti-Semitic, no one believes you. But they need to believe you because those guys are actual anti-Semites who say the Jews control everything. That's not true at all. And Lance is absolutely right. Israel is not a monolith. There's left-wing Israelis, there's right-wing Israelis, just like here, just like every country. They don't control everything. They're losing in the courts. If they controlled everything, why are they losing in the courts? So it's the idea of all those anti-Semitic stereotypes are 100% wrong. But you're not helping the cause by going around going, oh yeah, if you don't agree with my right-wing politics, I'm gonna shut you up forever. I'm gonna sue you for money. And I'm gonna say that you're anti-Semitic and that you're terrorist. No, you're doing the exact wrong things and you're hurting everyone, including yourself.
I did just want to touch on one last thing on the story, because you mentioned that it was rooted in racism, and the group, the JNF, has been accused of racism in the past for refusing to let Israelis who are not Jewish live on land that the group owns. So The Guardian reported that founded by the early Zionist movement in 1901 to buy land for Jewish settlement in what was then part of the Ottoman Empire, the JNF took control of large amounts of territory confiscated from the 700,000 Palestinians who were expelled or fled during Israel's 1948 War of Independence. And for decades, the fund refused to lease its land, covering about 13% of the country, to Israelis who were not Jewish.
Yeah, when you say no Jews, no non-Jews are allowed to live here because we don't want you, that's kind of the definition of racism. So get a load of these hypocrites declaring anyone else anti-Semitic or bigoted or terrorist. Total nonsense. This is America. We have freedom of speech here, and people are allowed to do boycott movements of any country, whether you like it or you don't. Thanks for watching The Young Turks. I really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that All you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.